In this demonstration, I'm going to build my scenes in Photoshop. After, these scenes will then be imported into After Effects and animated. I will also produce my style frame in this demonstration. A style frame is a still image of the proposed idea that will give the client a good idea of the stylistic direction I am headed in. It will feature typefaces, color choices, images. A style frame is not a storyboard. It is a sample of what to expect with the final product. It's important to set up your document with the correct dimensions. I'm going to use the same Photoshop file that I used to put together the mood board and the sketches. This is a constant. Right from the start, I work in the dimension of my output, 1920 by 1080. I'm going to use a variety of selection tools to isolate parts of the images that I want to use in my title sequence. Make sure you choose which technique is right for your project. Let's get to the design. I want to create a pan from the sky down into the underworld. I'll build all the layers in Photoshop and animate them with the 3D camera in After Effects. To make that look real, I need to make a foreground, a middle ground, and a background in Photoshop. From my source files, I'm going to use the sky as background, the fence as a middle ground, and the dirt as a foreground. I will work on these files first, isolating parts of the image that I want to use. I will label this layer by double-clicking on the layer title in the layer panel and naming it. Clear names for layers will help you later on when you're animating in After Effects. The layer is quite large, but I will leave it that way. When I import this into After Effects, I can retain the size of my layers, and leaving it large here will give me the flexibility when I animate it. One thing I could do is rotate it, using the selection tool and hovering over the corner until the rotate symbol appears, or using the rotation number box at the top. Next, I will work on the picket fence. I want to use just the fence, so I'm going to select and cut out everything else. First, I'll copy and paste the image into the project Photoshop file. Then I'll scale the image to the right size and get it into position. Now, there are lots of ways to select parts of the image. I can use the marquee selection box to remove large parts of the image. I have fairly straight lines between the slats of the fence, so I can use the marquee selection tool here too. Another way is to use the magnetic lasso tool. This will find the contours using pixel information. Here is my finished result on the fence. The next element to add is the transition between the above ground and the underground. For that, I downloaded this image of a garden up close. The angle is the most important. It's at eye level. So, as we pan down from the sky to the fence and pass into the underground, we get a sense of the ground. With the marquee tool, I'm going to select only the part that I want to use, which is the dirt. After pasting it in, I will resize it and slide it to the bottom of my image. My first scene now consists of the background, the sky, a middle ground, the fence, and the foreground, the dirt. I will add the flowers in later in my finishing touches. I'll get to work now on my second scene. For the second scene, I'll turn a rock formation into an underground cave. I will create a black background. In the toolbar, select the Shape tool. Select the right color. Draw the shape. I renamed the layer BG for background, and I pasted in the rock formation image from my source file. It's huge, and I'll resize it, and I'll rename this layer Rocks. I will remove the sky with the Sky selection tool. And I will use the magnetic lasso selection tool to remove parts of the sky from the contour of the rocks. Now, to make these rocks look like they're underground, first the color. I think it should be more in the blue-green spectrum rather than this warm, dusty beige desert color. For this, I will create a curves adjustment layer. The image should be darker, so I will lower the curve starting at the midpoint. The curve gradually falls off, giving a more natural result and blending the adjustment. I'll switch to the reds and lower all the red in the image to cool things off. The graph indicates there are some very bright reds. It's the patch of light on the left side of the image, so I will create another point on the graph for the bright areas and lower that. Now let's adjust the blues, raising them. Let's curve up the greens a little bit. According to the graph, most of the image is in the dark and bright areas. That means there's a lot of contrast, which is what I want. So with my adjustments in the green, I'm going to target the areas where the graph is the thickest. Now back in RGB, I want to increase the contrast of the image even more. So I'm going to move the darker and lightest parts of the image closer together so that the range falls off even quicker. I'm not getting the result that I want completely through curves, so I will add another adjustment layer, this time brightness and contrast. I will adjust the brightness and contrast. That bright spot is still there, so I will use a mask and brush. With the brush, I will paint into areas that I want to darken. I can brush on and off with white or black brushes. Now I have a nice background for my underground scene. I will group my second scene together. Next, I will add some more elements into the file. Let's get that mask in there. This represents the villain of the story, Frank Booth. To isolate the mask from the solid white background, I will use Select Color Range. I will use the eyedropper to select a portion of the image in the preview that I want to select out, the solid white. To refine the selection, I'll use the lasso tool with the Option key held down to deselect. I'll copy and paste it into my project file and rename it. Now for scene 1, I want to add flowers in the foreground. I have this image of tulips that I downloaded from Unsplash. I will make a copy of the original locked layer by dragging it into the new layer icon at the bottom of the layer panel. Then I will select the sky by going to Select Sky. This creates a selection of the sky. There's a watermark on the bottom of the image that I will have to remove. I will use the Marquee Selection tool to select the bottom of the image. I will paste it into my Photoshop file with the scenes and resize it and move the layer into place. Now when I move the dirt down, I have the flowers and the dirt. I can work on creating a more blended transition between the two in After Effects, but for now, that's good. Finally, I'll create some text for my style frames. I will create a new layer and rename it. Then with the text tool selected, I'll type in the name of the movie, Blue Velvet. The character panel is where I can customize the text. The first drop-down menu is the typeface. I can scroll through and the typefaces will change as I scroll, so it's an easy way to preview. Some, but not all of the options in the character menu are also available in the quick menu that appears when the type tool is selected. I will change the size so I can get a better sense of what typeface will work. I am looking for a classic script typeface. I can scroll through here and look at what has already been activated, or I can use Adobe fonts, which will activate licensed typefaces across all of my Adobe apps. So what appears here in Photoshop will also appear in After Effects too, every time I'm logged into my Adobe account. There are lots of typefaces here. I will filter for calligraphic typefaces. Here's one I like. To activate it, slide the Activate button over. You can activate individual fonts or the whole typeface family. Now back in Photoshop, when I scroll through the list of available typefaces, I see it. I'll size it and get it centered. So that will be my final title at the end of the title sequence. I've done a lot so far. I've built up an image in layers, created a mood and tone for the scenes, and chosen a typeface. Now it's a good time to export these frames as style frames to show the client.